Hi, my name is Bob Taylor. I'm your host today for this segment of Our Ventura TV, and I'm here with my guest, Sharon Daly with Mossy Foot. Good afternoon, Sharon. How are you today?
Hi, Bob. Nice to talk with you today, be here.
Mossy Foot. What is Mossy Foot?
Yes, that's a rather unusual name. I get that question a lot. The reason it's called Mossy Foot is because the texture of the skin becomes like moss.
Oh, so Mossy Foot is a disease?
It is a disease of the feet, affects the feet and the legs, and it's something that we find in volcanic areas where people are barefoot in the soil. It's a disease of poverty. People are too poor to afford shoes. They're out barefoot, exposed to volcanic soil.
So it's just soil itself that causes the Mossy Foot?
That's right. If I were to put one dot on my hand, there'd be 5,000 particles of volcanic glass in that one little dot. So as they're out barefoot in the soil and not just walking on top of the soil, but immersed in it, like in monsoon rains, it's like miry clay, then it gets into their pores, it gets into the lymphatic system. And about 1 in 13 people develop an inflammation from it. They're the ones that contract the disease.
Okay, so your group works with people from Ethiopia.
Yes, that's right.
Is Mossy Foot in other places other than Ethiopia? Because we have a lot of volcanic areas in different areas. Is it mostly in Ethiopia?
It's a very high incidence in Ethiopia because of the poverty level and because most of the people where we work are agrarian. There are about 1 million people in Ethiopia that are afflicted with this disease. It's also in some other East African countries, India, Sri Lanka, some South American countries. So it's a global problem, but the good news is it is totally preventable, and we're looking at eradicating this type of elephantiasis.
So it is, that was one of my next questions. It is, everybody knows about elephantitis to a certain extent because of the movie Cher put out so long ago. So everybody has heard of that, but it is a form of that.
Yes, it is. There are two different kinds of elephantiasis. One is caused by insect bite, but this one is caused by the volcanic glass in the soil.
So a total prevention is if you're wearing shoes in that area. It's not something that can jump and get you or anything. It's strictly by wearing shoes.
That's right.
And it is what they have is curable.
It is curable to a certain extent. If their feet are just really terrible, like say on a range from a stage 1 to 5, if they have a stage 4 or 5, you'll always see the effects of the disease. There'll be some scarring, there will be some swelling in their feet. They will have to treat their feet all their lives in order to keep themselves well. But I've seen people like Zelalem that appeared on our doorstep a couple years ago when we were out there. His feet were about this wide. He had huge growths on his feet and legs. He came in, his brother brought him from another province begging to have surgery. And we said, no, surgery is not the answer. If you get surgery and then you go back to your home, you're out in the soil barefoot, you don't have any follow-up from the doctors, you'll get a terrible infection we can't cure. So the brother kept bringing him back. He kept getting our kits, our treatment kits. 16 months later, his feet were down to a size that he could wear the shoes that we had made. And then after that, we trained him. We gave him vocational training. He became a barber. So not only was
what a story.
Yeah. So now he's supporting himself. So his life totally was transformed.
So you work both segments. You work for the cure and for the prevention.
That's right. And for restoration.
And you spend time down in Ethiopia yourself.
I spend between 3 and 4 months of the year in Ethiopia.
Wow. And so you hand out kits, basic kits. And in a kit, what is in a kit? Is it medicine? Is it ointments? Is it what do you have in a kit that people can use to help themselves with when you hand them out?
The treatment kit is really very interesting. It is so simple. It's soap, bleach. We put 1 capful of bleach in a gallon of water, and they soak their feet in that. Whitefield antifungal ointment that we use. We teach them how to do lymphatic massage. We use ACE bandages, have them elevate their feet at night, and then of course give them shoes. And we make the shoes are big, oversized leather shoes. Out of our 68 employees in Ethiopia, the majority of them are people who were Mossy Foot patients.
So you're huge. I mean, 68 people, I mean, don't get me wrong, that's huge, but for a disease that a lot of people have never heard of, that's an awful lot of people, employees, working to controlled in one way or another this disease.
Yes. We were the only organization that worked with this. I grew up in Ethiopia. My dad was a missionary doctor. He was the only doctor for over 1 million people for a number of years. So it was later on, when he was 85 years old, that he had the opportunity to focus on Mossy Foot disease. So we've been around since 1997, and because of that, we have a fairly we are the largest organization dealing with this, and for many years the only one. Now we have a few startups, but we have 16 clinics where we're treating people.
Wow, you guys are
Yeah.
you guys are really rocking it.
Yeah.
When it comes down to taking care of this.
Right. And then we're also working with prevention through education. We have a program giving shoes out to children. Recently, Samaritan's Feet gave us 13,000 pairs of shoes. They want to continue partnering with us so that we can prevent this, so the little children and their families will never have to suffer the way that people have.
You know, with so many nonprofits around, I think collaboration in any way you can towards the good
Yes.
of good of the people, shall we say,
Right.
whether it's adults, whether it's disease, whether it's kids, whether it's cancer, any collaboration you can do is just pure bonus for everybody.
It
You know,
is.
because it's all about the people we're trying to care for.
That's right.
Okay, so you're based here in Ventura County.
Yes, we
And you're a
are.
global organization.
That's right.
How did you pick Ventura County?
We live in Ventura County. When
You and your father when he retired, or before he went to Ethiopia?
I moved to Ventura County, I started teaching here in Ventura County. So I taught here and then retired from teaching. I was teaching in the Oxnard School District. We went out to Ethiopia to visit my dad. Well, I grew up there, but
Right.
the last visit out there before we took over was in 2004, when my dad was really ill and he was bedridden at that time. So we went out to see, at that time, the 4 clinics, met the people, came back here, brought my dad back. 2 weeks later, he passed away. 2 weeks away from being 92 years old. And after he died, Dr. Barlow died, and people thought, well, Dr. Barlow died, the project is over. Well, when you see the people, their plight, how much they've suffered with this disease, how they've been ostracized from the community, you can't sleep at night. You know, we just had to do something. So my husband Jim and I got out his correspondence and started writing to the donors and said, no, this is going to continue. So that was the beginning of our involvement. And since we were living here, the home base in the state started here in Ventura County.
Okay, now how did you get to be global? That must have been an awful lot of work on your part. Because I mean, it started out you supporting your dad, or you and your group supporting your dad in the whole thing. How did the word get out globally?
My parents wrote to people prolifically throughout their whole, our family went out to Ethiopia when I was a baby, the end of 1945. So through all those years, they would write to people that were contributing. My dad was a missionary doctor, and they just kept in contact with people, so they had a lot of different contacts. And then also, how did we get involved globally? That's a good question. Part of it was their contacts. The mission that they were with, there were people that they knew from Australia, some people from England, a few people in Europe. I went to school with some people in Scotland in different areas. So we had some connections
Right.
around the world. But the reason we're in Ethiopia was that's where my the majority of his work in Africa was.
Right.
And they needed the funding over there, so we're helping out with the raising awareness and funding. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Well, no, you really are.
Okay.
You know, I kind of look at you, like everybody knows, or a lot of people know, that Rotary is out to eradicate polio.
Yes.
And that's the big thing for Rotary. Mm-hmm. But I kind of associate, I've never heard of Mossy Foot, but now all of a sudden I'm thinking of you just like Rotary in the way of trying to eradicate and cure
Yes.
a disease that is a crippling disease for a lot of people.
Yes.
Now, talk a little bit about what this does to people that have that kind of thing in Ethiopia, or how it affects their lives.
Yes, that's a really important question. And if I could go back to your previous
Sure.
comment there, for a long time it was not accepted as a disease by the World Health Organization because it's not something that you can pass on to somebody else. It's not contagious. And because of that, it wasn't accepted as a neglected tropical disease.
What'd they call it? A condition?
A condition, and they just ignored it basically. But not too long ago, they accepted snake bite as a neglected tropical disease. So a doctor in Ethiopia argued, if snake bite is a neglected tropical disease, why isn't mossy foot disease, also known as podoconiosis, a neglected tropical disease?
That's a little bit of a mouthful for me.
Yes.
I like mossy foot. That sounds okay.
So then your question about how people are treated. It is really a tragedy for many of these people when they develop the disease. When their feet start to swell, they get growths on them, they become very grotesque. Frequently they smell terrible, they'll get ulcers, and then they're cast out. Nobody wants them in school, so maybe they're in 1st or 2nd grade. Maybe they've never gotten to go to school. So basically, their friends and people just make fun of them. They're ostracized. And in Africa, it's very community-based. Through all the poverty, the famines, the epidemics, and all the things that have happened, catastrophic things, they've banded together. So if one person in the community is hurting, they all help each other. They know that if it's their turn, that everybody else will band around them. So when they're cast out by the society, that is worse than going to jail or anything that we could consider in our society, because we're so used to being independent. You know, we can go to the bank, we can get a loan, we have our cars. You just can't imagine the level of poverty there. They live in a little hut that is very small. It would fit in the corner of a room here with a dirt floor, thatched with grass. They sleep on the floor together, huddled together on the floor on a mat. The other part of the house would be taken up with any animals that they have that would come in at night. They have a little fire. They dig a hole in the ground, put rocks around, and that's where they cook food, which might be a couple cabbage leaves a day or a little bit of grain.
It's, you know, listening to that, it just makes me realize how blessed we really are.
Yes.
You know, I interviewed a nonprofit once that used grocery bags to knit grocery bags together to make mats for some of the countries that sleep on the ground. So they would just ship these grocery bags, and they would get orders from all kinds of nonprofits, such as yours, for these mats. And it was just a bunch of volunteer women in southern Ontario, Canada, that come up with this idea, and all they made was mats, and they just saved all the grocery bags they could get their hands on and put those together. I do have another question, and then we're going to be winding down after that. So what's the youngest patient you ever saw with this? And I guess the oldest isn't important, because they could have had it for 40 years before you saw them. But how quickly does it affect people?
I've seen children about 5 years old with the disease. One little boy, Abraham, I saw at one of our clinics. And at the beginning, he had swelling. First you see like a little track right across the top, right between the ankle and the foot. And then the foot starts to swell, and you start to see little growths over the toes. And he was at that stage. His mother brought him very regularly to clinic over a number of years, and I saw him over a few years. The last time I saw Abraham, he was not wearing our special leather shoe that we made for people that have mossy foot disease. He was wearing a tennis shoe that his mother had bought in the market, so he was totally cured.
It gives me goosebumps. Okay, believe it or not, our time is gone.
Oh,
but I do want everybody to know how they can get involved with you and how they can find out more about your project.
Yes.
So, what website, what do you have?
Yes, please have them check out the website, which is easy to remember. It's just www.mossyfoot, MOSSYFOOT.com. Moss, like the moss that grows under the tree.
And people from there can find out how to get involved, how to help, and what to do if they want to volunteer in one way or another to help.
That's right. There's an inquiry section on the web.
All right. Time's out. Thank you very much for being here, Sharon. It's great. This is the first interview I've ever done where I got goosebumps listening to somebody talk. You're very passionate about the things that you do and things that you say. Wow, boy, I tell you, I learned an awful lot. I'm not sure about you out there. Like I was just telling Sharon, first time I've gotten goosebumps talking to somebody about the passion they have and what they're doing for the nonprofit. My name is Bob Taylor. A special thank you to our guest, Sharon Daly. Thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to our studio audience for being there. Without you, we really wouldn't be here. This is Bob Taylor signing off until next time. Thank you very much.